Okay, my friends, this is going to be straight to the point. I am claiming that everything that is done in the human body is a result of enzymes. And enzymes are the result of bacteria. Bacteria are the factories that create the enzymes. Enzymes can literally fix DNA and fix the genome and correct it if you have the correct enzymes. They are made to fix DNA in some cases. Normally they do all the other processes in your body, but in addition to that, they can go in and repair DNA that's not functioning correctly. And they're talking about all of these DNA tests of babies to see if their genome is working correctly. All right, here we are here. Enzymes absolutely can change DNA, and they do so naturally inside your cells as part of this process. Replication, they replicate DNA. Now, DNA repair, this is where we want to look. Enzymes like nuclease cut out damaged DNA. They cut it out. Ligases reconnect DNA strands. DNA glycosiles recognize and remove abnormal bases. These enzymes correct or change faulty sequences in the DNA. All right, that's your genome. That's your genome. If you have a defective genome, and if you have apparently the correct enzymes, it can fix your genome. Not maybe in every single case, but it appears that that's their job. And I would like to see an analysis of the microbiome of these babies basically instantly when they're born, and make sure they have all the little bits and pieces that create the enzymes. Because right away these babies are getting sick. As I'm going to show you, or I have shown you, a very tragic case, and I did look up the diseases that are associated to that disease, and I will show you the results. But anyway, they can do this, is basically correct or change faulty sequences. Now, we have gene editing in the lab and so forth. Natural genetic recombination, All right, but it's always enzymes. Enzymes. And what it does to the DNA, it copies it, it cuts or removes parts, reconnects things, precisely edits DNA. These are just CRISPRs. Move DNA segments around, write RNA into host DNA. My point is that an enzyme comes from bacteria. They create ribosomes, the ribosomes create the enzymes do the chemistry. If you don't have the enzymes, you don't get the natural chemistry. You may be able to get it from a CRISPR, but most people have it just naturally happen because their microbiome is creating the enzymes because they have the correct bacteria. That is basically is my claim at the moment. And the only way we could ever determine whether I'm right or wrong is to be doing bacterial swabs and find out what is in this baby's microbiome, which they have virtually nothing. They must start out with some really raw devices that work on some of the most basic materials. But if you don't have those, instantaneously you can get very, very sick. And let's just look at this one case. All right, this is kind of a tragic story. Listen to this.
Australia is set to lead the world with a revolutionary heel prick test that will detect hundreds of genetic conditions in newborns, enabling life-saving early intervention. This new technology enhances the current heel prick test, which only screens for 32 disorders. 2 years ago, Sunrise spoke with Brisbane mum Louise Grant, whose daughter Isabel was diagnosed with a rare life-threatening illness at 18 weeks old.
All right, now, 18 weeks old. She's not had any basic development of her digestive system by that age. There should have been some built-in stuff, whether it's built into the baby or whether it's passed through the vaginal canal or whatever. But there's something that should be built into that baby to do the chemistry that she's missing. Now, let's just go through it. Now, don't forget, rare life-threatening illness at 18 weeks old, and it's a genetic problem, and she lost her hearing. Listen here. And she 99, I guess almost, I think she's the only one ever survived. Hold on.
Which could have been treated earlier if this new heel prick test had been around. And would like to welcome Louise Grant to the show. Thanks for joining.
What I'd like to know is how would they treat it? What are they going to do to treat it? If they knew at 1 week old she was predispositioned to have this with this genetic disorder, what would they do to get her through this?
Well, Isabel survived but tragically lost her hearing because of this illness. What difference would this testing have made for your daughter, do you think?
Well, as you saw then, she wouldn't have got critically sick at 4 months old, and unlike other SCID children
All right, we're going to look into this disease in a minute.
Passed away, she fortunately survived, but that's probably the main difference for her, is that she's a SCID survivor. I was told when she was first diagnosed that she was the first baby in 20 years to have ADA SCID, and I don't believe that's true. I just think she's the first one to survive with that condition. So it's it's huge that we're bringing in that SCID's been added to newborn screening.
Yeah, this is a big milestone, of course, for Australia, potentially for those young kids that could be screened, but for you as well, because ever since this happened, you've been campaigning to update the heel prick test. How do you feel knowing this might change the lives of other children?
It's such a relief, to be honest. It's still the worst news that you can give a new parent, that their child has a rare genetic condition, but being able to identify it early and treat it early is a game changer for these children.
All right, let me just mention something. To identify it early and treat it early, absolutely. And how would you identify something that the child is missing? It would be in the feces, would show that there's some problem with the bacterial contents of their intestines and so forth, because they really have no defensive immunities at birth, almost none. There's got to be some built in, as I say. There's got to be a set of built-in stuff, and then after that you put on special bacteria that you're exposed to, and then normally you're going to be already immune to it as you grow. But if you don't have any bacteria at all, or you're missing some, or you've been given antibiotics, or the mother's given antibiotics at birth or whatever, and it killed the bacteria that was supposed to be doing this job, then that's the issue. Now let's see what she has to say here. And these are the kind of things, when I take my dog to the vet, the first thing they want to know is a stool sample. And then they check it for this and that, worms and, parasites and all, which we should do too. We have the same sort of conditions too, fungus and parasites and worms and everything else in your body. And it's in your feces primarily. And then they should also do a screening of what bacteria are in there, and if there's an excess of certain ones or not enough of other ones. And it's really not a big deal to do this anymore. AI should be able to do this very easy, and it may be able to do it with a picture of the poop, and it would see the different color spectrums, meaning the different molecules, meaning the different bacteria, meaning the different enzymes. And then it could compile it and say, okay, we got too much of this and 7% of that, so you only should have 2%, and done. Within a couple of seconds, you got a result. Anyway, this kid is sick and still sick. Now listen to what she has to say. Here she goes. I'm going to come back a little bit. All right.
But being able to identify it early and treat it early is a game changer for these children. So when I heard last year that we had actually added SCID and spinal muscular atrophy to the Queensland newborn screening, I was beyond relieved and quite happy that that had happened.
Emotional, no doubt, as well. Well, congratulations for that work. I've got to ask you about your beautiful little girl. How's Isabel doing?
She's doing all right. She had her 4th birthday party over the weekend. We did find out in February that she's been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called DFSP.
All right, we're going to look into this DFSP tumors in a second.
Now, so she has multiple surgeries for that, but genetic testing of newborns might change that as well, because there's a handful of children worldwide that have ADA SCID and have this rare cancer as well. So we think...
All right, so they're tying these two things together. I would tie those two things together as related to one specific enzyme, one specific bacteria that creates that specific enzyme. Not necessarily that it's the gene that's defective, because the genes should literally be able to be repaired if you have the right enzymes in bacteria, I think. I mean, at least it's a shot. And well, you know what? I'm going to show you, well, in a second you'll see it. Hold on.
I think there's a link, but
there's
hopefully with newborn screening we will be able to fund more research, find out more about these genetic conditions. So beyond saving the babies' lives, we can actually help to improve their quality of life.
All right, you see, the two things are related, the cancer and this other issue. And right away, it's affecting them right after birth. So there's something in that digestive system that they're not being able to bring into their body to get this enzyme. They don't have the right bacteria. Apparently, that's my take on this thing at this moment. All right, you see she was talking about this DFSP. Well, this is research involving this and the microbiome. It's research about it, just research. Recent studies suggest that the intramural microbiome, which is the microbes inside the tumor, in the DFSP may play a role in suppressing tumor malignancy. Microbiome, microbes within the tumor. It suggests a potential link between the microbiome and the progression of DFSP. We, in our microbiome within us, we create all of these different bacteria and enzymes. And they're talking about those enzymes inside the tumor. Now, I don't know if they necessarily mean microbes, which would be the bacteria. They may just have to have the enzymes, but they go inside the tumor and they kill the tumor. It suggests a potential link. Now, FMT, which is the fecal matter transplant, and cancer treatment, ongoing trials exploring the use of FMT in combination with immunotherapy for various cancers, including melanoma, which is another type of skin cancer. Some trials are using fecal matter for cancer survivors who responded well to immunotherapy, hoping to maximize the benefits. That's the biggest mistake they could ever make. They're taking fecal matter from people that survived. They just barely got by. They think it's because it's good, because they have some special stuff. No, they need the best fecal matter. They don't want something from somebody that's already sick. They're using, including melanoma, from fecal matter from cancer survivors. You don't want that. They're much more likely to reoccur because it's probably they don't have a real good source of it. What we need to do is get a database and look and see, why are these people getting these cancers? What's high and what's low on the bacteria which create the enzymes? It really is as simple as that, to get a database. And then we will have know one way or the other, maybe Roger's just insane, he's a crazy guy. But I would look at these babies' fecal matter immediately, instantly, almost instantly after they're born, and do it daily. Just do it daily, because it's not that big of a deal. I don't think once you start down and get some AI working on this, and they can make a little device you have in your house. You put it down and you swab a little swab of it, and it says, okay, here's what we got. Whatever, you just take a picture of it and send it off to AI, and if they could analyze the different frequencies, which you can do it with CMOS now. You can basically see all the different frequencies of what you're looking at and the quantities of each one, which would indicate the different types of bacteria and enzymes and the quantities. And then if you have to adjust something, it would probably be able to recommend what to do. But this would be a horrifying problem. Well, it is a horrifying problem because autism too, not only this, but autism, virtually everything. Hold on one second. This is, again, research only. I'm not saying to take anything, but I think we need to immediately work on these bacterial transplants. That's what they should be called, bacterial transplants, because that's what you need is the bacteria. The problem is they're not doing the research the way they should on this. This should be hit like a SWAT team. This is FMT being investigated as a potential treatment for gastrointestinal behavior symptoms associated with autism, the autism spectrum disorder. Early studies, though small, and that's the problem, have shown promising results, including improvements in gastrointestinal issues and a reduction in ASD symptoms after fecal matter transplant. But the researchers, however, more research, particularly larger, placebo-controlled, well, why don't they do it? This has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years almost. They've known about this forever, that the gut bacteria is the source of the enzymes, and the source is enzymes are the source of literally everything that's done in your body. Your body would just fall over dead without the enzymes, literally within seconds. And this gets, as long as your gut is working right, and Marguerite's son John had all kinds of digestive problems, and she, like I said, I think I mentioned this, she went to school to learn more about it, and she got him his digestive system working correctly, where he poops just normal, no diarrhea, no constipation, no this and that, and as long as that's happening, his body is digesting correctly. No gas and odors and all that nasty stuff. That is an indication that something's not digesting exactly right. They'll come and go a little bit here and there, but not on a continuous basis of just, we're having to wear diapers and all that business. And that happens, and it happens because your body just can't digest. It's nothing you're doing wrong. It's your body hasn't got the bacteria to do the digestion. Okay, here's fecal matter transplant, FMT, shows promise potential treatment for Alzheimer's. It influences the brain. What about Parkinson's? FMT and Parkinson's. Hope for Parkinson's disease. Over 200 patients treated. Where is it? Fecal microbiota transplants. 2 studies in which single FMT administered to patients Parkinson's provided evidence of an improved constipation rate of 90%. And this is what causes the problems, is you're not digesting correctly. Double-blind placebo, elevated clinical effect, safety of the single fecal microtranspllant in patients with early stage, It's showing that it's working. Groundbreaking study reveals FMT could significantly improve motor symptoms in Parkinson's. It's coming around, but they're just so slow. I mean, this has been years that this should have been jumped on long ago. Every single thing in your body needs enzymes. Enzymes are created by the microbiota. Here's FMT being explored as a potential treatment for peanut butter allergies. It's virtually for everything. And here's the problem. This is the state of fecal transplants. And this just goes back to October of last year. And they had to shut down. As of December 31st, they're no longer going to be giving out these fecal matter transplants. Why did Open Biome decide to discontinue the fecal matter transplant distribution? All right, they had an October 31st deadline. FDA need to issue a decision based on the submission of this Open Biome's paperwork application. And it was so hard for them to do, the written permission to continue distributing the FMT, as Open Biome has stated publicly, the discontinuation of the FMT distribution is not related to any of the safety or quality of the products, but rather the difficulties the organization has had in making its paperwork submission over the past 22 months. Or its IND, whatever that means. I forget what it means, but it's basically the hoops that they wanted to jump through, and they said, forget about it, we're just going to close up. Instead of saying, let's figure a way to figure this out, because it works fabulously, apparently, just research. Again, I'm not recommending to do anything. And plus, you can't get it. It's not allowed. It's against the law. Or literally, it's against the law. The only thing you can have it for is if you fail the drugs 3 times, I think, for Clostridium difficile. And then they'll let you take the fecal matter transplant when you're just about ready to die. And then about 90% of the time it fixes you and it never comes back, because now you have your own independent bacteria working in your own independent natural environment. So that's what I want to point out. I'd like to have Kennedy see this and understand this is what we're up against, and if you have digestive issues, you're going to have problems with bacteria, because the bacteria do the digesting. If they're not there or they're weak, you're just not going to digest right. You're going to have cramps, you're going to have bloating, you're going to have gas, you're going to have nausea, you're going to have upset stomach, acid, vomiting, diarrhea, all of those, constipation, all of them. Any one of those can be a source of real problems for your gut, and it doesn't take long. It only takes a couple of days to have an issue with that in your gut to where it's starting to impact your health. It's very, very quick. These enzymes are doom, 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 just like that all day long. They're working 24 hours a day. And you have to have them in copious quantities. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I think this really, really, really deserves a look. And all we need to do is take fecal matter transplants from the babies the minute they're born, basically, and just follow them through and make sure that they have the right bacteria to do the digestion that has to be done. That's all I'm asking for, is the database. Once you have the database, everything will flow from there. But you don't have the database, you don't know who's healthy and who's not healthy. You just have to look at it and say, oh yeah, that kid's healthy, oh, that kid's sick. Well, why? That kid's got certain bacteria creating certain enzymes that do the certain jobs in a perfectly healthy way, and this one just doesn't have them. Can we just put them from here to here? It appears so. These FMTs are working pretty well, it looks like to me. Strictly as research, that's what it looks like to me. And I think it should be explored in much more serious, very, very quickly, because again, the database, a couple of weeks we'll know one way or the other what's going on. It's as quick as that. All right, thanks. I love you all.